Hi, everyone. My name is Dan Tiernan. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Campbell and one of the 5 owners of the company. I am also a licensed CAM, and I work closely with many of our association clients and some of the more complex issues they may face from time to time. For those of you not familiar with Campbell, we've been in business since 1953. That's 10 years before I was even born, and manage over 400 HOA and condo association clients from Dade County to the Treasure Coast. We're proud to be South Florida's highest rated property management company. So just a reminder, this webinar is for information purposes only and not legal advice. If you require legal advice specific to your community, you should reach out to your attorney. So this meeting is about how to be efficient and effective in one very specific area, board meetings. Well, why board meetings? Because that's really a public display as a board of your performance. If meetings appear dysfunctional, owners lose confidence. If meetings run well, then it instills confidence in the owner that they have an effective board. That's why it's such an important topic and one that we wanted to do a webinar on today. So based on the questions we received before the meeting and what we've seen in the chat so far, it sounds like not everybody's meetings are running great. We're seeing a lot in the chat about owner disruptions, boards not listening, boards disagreeing, being disagreeable and attacking owners, lots of screaming, meetings lasting too long, and so on. So, looking through all of these, what I end up kind of summarizing is that the worst board meetings share these 3 common characteristics. Number 1, they last too long. Number 2, nothing gets accomplished. And number 3, everybody leaves unhappy and disappointed at the result. So we're going to shoot for the opposite of that. We're going to shoot for a board meeting. A great board meeting is going to have 3 characteristics. It's going to be short, it accomplishes a lot, and then thirdly, everybody leaves happy and impressed. That might be a stretch. Maybe satisfied might be better there. So at the beginning of this webinar, we launched a poll, and one of those questions was, how long does a typical board meeting take at your community? Ashley, let's take a look at those results. Can you share that with us?
I'm going to share it right now. Can you see it?
Yes. So it looks like 37% of the respondents have an hour or less. 55% are 1 to 2 hours, and 9% are 2 hours or more. So in our experience, if you've got a reasonable sized board, which means 7 members or less, if it's larger than that, sometimes things can run on a bit. But if you've got 7 or less members, regular board meetings shouldn't take longer than an hour. So that's what we're going to focus on here today, is to make sure that you can be as effective and efficient as possible in your board meetings. And we're going to share with you the 9 steps necessary to have a great board meeting that has these 3 characteristics. It's 1 hour or less. Again, this is for a standard board meeting, not a special meeting. And you get everything accomplished you intended to accomplish, and that all the board members and the owners leave satisfied. So it's important to understand also how did Ashley and I come up with this? Well, honestly, we didn't. We cheated. We asked 150, all of our managers. We have over 150 licensed CAMs. The average CAM at Campbell's got over 10 years experience. And we did this at a managers meeting a few years ago. And Ashley, you want to explain where we have this?
Yes. The ideas we will discuss today are based on a blog post that we got from all of our 150 plus managers. And it is on Florida Association News. The blog post is 9 steps to an effective board meeting. So in case you ever want to refer back to it, you can always find it on FAN. And I will be including a link to this version in the presentation.
Great.
Yep, and then this is based on our manager's wisdom, which are articles on our blog that were created with all the combined input of our 150 plus managers. So you can read the blog and subscribe at www.readfan.org. And with that, I think we're going to get started with the first point, which is lack of preparation. So have you ever shown up at a board meeting where board members are hearing about topics for the first time? Board members are asking for more information and are generally confused. Obviously, this does not look good. We want the board to be prepared. Dan, what do you recommend for boards to be properly prepared?
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. So it's really two things, the agenda and the board package. So from an agenda standpoint, it's really important to make sure that you only put items on there that you're prepared to act upon, things that you've discussed with other board members in the past. And if it's not something that you feel like everyone on the board has a clear understanding of, it shouldn't be on the agenda. And then the second piece, as I mentioned, is having a really good detailed board package. So it needs to provide all the relevant information for the agenda items, and it needs to be sent out at least a couple of days in advance of the meeting. And if you do these things effectively, you'll be much better prepared for the meeting, and it won't look chaotic, and it'll instill a lot of confidence in your owners. So the bottom line, being prepared is really, it's number one because it's the most important thing. And if you do this first step well, you'll be off to a good start.
Yep. And the number two challenge we need to address is board members not being able to see each other or hear each other, and owners not able to hear or see the board members speaking. So Dan, what do board members need to do to ensure clear communication at board meetings?
Yeah, it's really simple. It's all about having the right setup in the room and having the right equipment available for you to be able to use. So it's important, first of all, to remember that what we're talking about is a board meeting. So the first thing to focus on is that board members can easily communicate. So many boards have their directors sit in a long, kind of straight table facing a crowd of owners. And if you have 5 or more people at a table like this, it can be really difficult for board members to see each other or potentially hear each other. So that's why, the ideal arrangement is really a U, a V, or a semicircle, so that it makes it easier for the board members to see each other and hear each other. And then the next thing you want to make sure you deal with is, I'm sure many of you have snowbird board members that might be calling into the meeting. And, what I've seen people do in the past is, take the cell phone out, set it down, and turn it up. This is not a good idea. That your cell phone's not a very effective speakerphone. But you can find, like, this is an example of one that is, under $100. You can get it on Amazon. It works very effectively. It's battery powered Bluetooth, and it ties in with your phone, and it's much more effective. But if you find out that if it turns out that you're going to have a bigger crowd, then what you may need to consider is getting speakers and a microphone. And again, it used to be real expensive to put in like a PA system, but now you can get, something much simpler. Honestly, I've used karaoke machines in the past. They have a speaker and a microphone, and you can get these things for, again, under $200. So, and then one other critical thing that a lot of people don't take advantage of enough is this: having a gavel. A gavel is a great tool. Using it has kind of a universal understanding. Using it to open the meeting and close the meeting, is really its primary use. But when order needs to be restored, it's a lot better than screaming. And then, obviously, if you've got some more complex issues that you might need to be discussing, having a projector to be able to present information to the full crowd and to the board at the same time is something you definitely should consider.
Yes, and we need to consider the use of virtual meetings now. 2 years ago, less than 5% of our associations were using, these virtual meeting platforms like Zoom. And now I would say that greater than 90% of our associations are using virtual meeting platforms like Zoom. They're not going away. They're very convenient. It can be a bit tricky working through the audio and video, especially for hybrid meetings, where there's a primary physical location and remote access is also allowed. So it's really important to work with your management company to get this set up. We actually have experts at Campbell that do this as well. And we do have several blog posts on the topic on Florida Association News, so you can review these. The last one, how to hold hybrid Zoom board meetings, is very good. That helps to explain, how you can make it work with in person and then also virtually. Now, as we saw on the poll, many of your board meetings are lasting more than an hour, some 2 hours. Dan, what can our board members do to finish their meetings in an hour or less?
Yep. Thank you, Ashley. The whole key to this is planning. And as we talked about earlier, and I'm going to repeat some things that came from prior points. It's making sure that you don't put an item on the agenda if you're not 100% sure you're ready to vote on it. So the way you do that is that the president should be responsible for making sure that they understand everyone's position in advance and have a consensus to ensure the agenda moves along. So if items haven't been reviewed and discussed in advance, it's very difficult to have a productive discussion, and as you all know, you can't have a quorum of the board when discussing association business outside of a meeting, but it is perfectly fine to share information via email and to have one-on-one or small group discussions outside of scheduled board meetings. The key is you can't have a quorum, and then you can't vote either via email or do any voting outside, but you absolutely can share information and share ideas before you get into the actual meeting. And then if for some reason there's a problem with getting closure and wanting to move forward with the vote for the motion, there's a really simple thing you can do. It's 3 great words I don't hear people use enough, which is call the question. This is a simple way to gain consensus that the board is ready to vote on an agenda item. So if you've kind of beat it continually and it's getting redundant, someone can make a motion. Even if you believe that it's going to fail, you can still make a motion. Say, I'll make a motion to replace all the mailboxes in the homeowner association. And then someone can second it, and then everyone can vote against it, and you can move on, as an example, or move forward with it. But you don't even have to necessarily support what you're making a motion for. It's just basically trying to push it along and make things happen. So that's something that using the call to question is not used nearly enough, and it's a great way to save some time.
Yes, and now some people that are not familiar with community board meetings think they may be like a town hall. And because of this, many meetings suffer from unruly owners and sometimes unruly board members. Dan, what is the best way to avoid this problem? Well,
the key here is establishing the ground rules and clearly communicating them. So it just needs to be reminded, everyone needs to be reminded that board meetings are for boards to make decisions and conduct business. They're very different than town halls or owner meetings. And, owners have rights too. They absolutely have rights to attend, observe, and listen, but their rights to speak are fairly limited to, agenda items and then only when they're called upon. And it's important too, though, that you explain these rules at the beginning of the meeting. This way, if an owner breaks the rules, they will have been given advance notice, and it won't appear like they're being picked on or treated unfairly by board members. And another thing you might want to do is consider including the rules of the meeting on the agenda. Again, just so people understand, because you never know when a new owner might be, joining the community and coming to the board meeting. They might just not understand, and you don't want to make them feel like they're being picked on by having to tell them to quiet down and wait their turn.
Yep, and this is an example of the policy regarding how the board meetings will function. I will go ahead and include this in the presentation so that way you can incorporate it into your board meetings.
Thank you, Ashley.
Yep, and number 5 is an area that a lot of associations struggle with. It's staying on the agenda. And this is another reason that board meetings go long. Dan, how can boards help manage this issue?
Yeah, Ashley, it's interesting. This is really the simplest one, and it's really just about staying on topic and staying on time. Board meetings are not designed for brainstorming. They're really, you have an agenda for a reason, so you need to have the agenda, you need to follow it, don't deviate, and make sure you continue to follow it. So it really is that simple. And a lot of people haven't really thought through why it is so important to stay on the agenda. And I'll tell you the reason why is that in condominiums, it's literally not legal to talk about something that's not on the agenda. And the reason why is that if you don't include something, someone may not be able to be there to hear about it. If you want to potentially talk about changing the clubhouse rules, people that frequent the clubhouse might otherwise have decided to come for the meeting. So it's really important to make sure that you stay on the agenda, and so that you don't have any surprises and people can, people's expectations will be managed. They won't feel like they're being excluded from any information that they should be aware of. And this is another policy that we're going to share with you through the presentation. We'll send it out to you. It's fairly straightforward and fair. And the short version of this is that the president and the manager set the meeting. The president sends out the planned meeting agenda to the rest of the board and asks for input. And the president can consider the input, but ultimately makes the final decisions on what's going to be on the meeting agenda. If a majority of board members want something to be on the agenda, they can vote at the meeting to add it to the next meeting. So it takes into account, a dictatorial president that might not want to include what other people want to have. Well, they can add it at the next board meeting. And also, if there's something that the owners feel like needs to be discussed, the owners can actually have the right to add an agenda item to a board meeting via a petition. They need to get 20% of owners to sign a petition to address an item in a board meeting. So owners have a say in it as well.
All right, and that takes us to number 6. So boards may have the ability to limit members' right to speak in a lot of ways, but we highly recommend that you set up an approach so that they feel like they are being heard to some degree. Dan, what does Campbell recommend to ensure owner input is managed effectively?
Yeah, Ashley, it's really a lot about that. The first thing you said is that just respecting the owner's right to be heard and making sure that you are giving them the chance to speak under the right terms. And, if there's a contentious issue that might be drawing a lot of owners to the meeting, like a special assessment or a major project that there might be some contention about, the best thing you can do is move that topic to early in the meeting. The last thing you want is a large group of unhappy owners sitting for a long time and getting more and more angry about something they want to discuss. And then again, just reminding people of the rules, when it's time to do it, reminding them it's only on agenda items, and it's, each person has 3 minutes or less, only when called upon. And then it's typically after the board's discussion on a topic, then the owners are allowed, but it's absolutely before the vote. You actually have the right to, as a board, make the vote and then allow questions afterwards, but that's very bad form and just very disrespectful. So we do not recommend that ever.
Yes. And then a lot of new board members ask about Robert's rules and what they need to know. How important is this to running a board meeting effectively, Dan?
So the key thing to understand about Robert's rules is most of what you're going to use in Robert's rules is right there in your agenda. And, calling a meeting to order effectively, establishing a quorum, approving minutes from prior meetings, getting reports, dealing with old and new business, and then really making motions and seconding motions and voting, and then adjourning the meeting. I mean, these are really the things that you mostly need to understand, and it's right there on all the agendas, and it absolutely should be on the agenda that you have for your HOA or condo meeting. So this is the vast majority of what you need to stay focused on, and don't let Robert's rules get you confused. Robert's rules is not the law. Condo and HOA boards are small boards, and Robert's rules is really for large parliamentary bodies, and not everything is relevant. And some of what you read might be contrary to your docs or even state law. So just don't let the protocol distract you from the content. It's a lot easier than you think it is. And however, if you're a new board member, a new president, and feel like you're struggling with managing this because you don't have the experience, it might make sense to let someone else, maybe your manager, cover that responsibility as like the parliamentarian. So that person can be responsible for making sure that you go through the agenda, make sure the motion happens at the second and you record that effectively so that things don't get lost in the moment. So by delegating this to another board member or the manager, the president can stay focused on the content and not be distracted by the details of the process, because it takes a little while to get used to this.
Yep. And now 8, how to deal with accusations and attacks. So, this is tough because owners may criticize, accuse, defame, slander you. How should boards handle this, Dan?
Great. Yeah, Ashley, this was one of the main things people put in the chat as we were getting started. And it really comes down to just being calm. And, you need to just prepare yourself mentally for what people might say. There's 2 things you need to do is prepare for it mentally and then practice a calm response. The vast majority of the time, you're going to know that you might be getting attacked. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't come out of nowhere. So if you can get yourself prepared mentally and practice a calm response so that you don't escalate things, that's critical. So even just saying something like, I don't agree with what you said. I don't believe it to be true. I consider what you said to be slanderous and I don't appreciate it. I'm disappointed that anyone would accuse me of something like this. And then stop and move on. Don't argue or debate. It's your job is to try to keep things calm and not escalate. So 3 things you want to make sure that you don't do when you get attacked and accused and slandered is that you don't want to get upset, which is really hard to do. But again, if you get mentally prepared for it, you can do it. And you don't want to attack back, argue, or debate. You want to move on. And you absolutely want to make sure you do everything you can not to escalate the situation and make it worse. And, use this only when you absolutely need to. And it's just for it, but it does tend to help bring back some order if you're able to use the gavel effectively.
Yes. And a lot of people ask questions during the registration about how to prepare the minutes, what to include and what not to include. Dan, what do you recommend for boards to include in the minutes and not to include in the minutes?
Yeah, Ashley, there's a lot of confusion around this. I've heard a lot of new board members have sometimes getting onto the board. They're driven by what they believe to be a lack of transparency and not sharing information effectively. And they sometimes might come in and say, well, we're going to put everything in the minutes. And that's kind of the worst possible thing you can do. It really opens you up to a lot of legal liabilities. So minutes are supposed to be very simple. And honestly, what they include is it's really almost a restatement of the agenda, like we showed earlier, where it's, calling the meeting to order, getting the quorum, approving the prior minutes. So that's the vast majority of your minutes is restating that those things actually happened, and then how motions were voted upon, and that's really what's supposed to be on there. And then the adjournment of the meeting. So some things you do not want to include are owner or board member comments. That's not the point of the minutes. And then you also, anytime someone says, I want the meeting minutes to reflect, that's a good sign of something you do not want to put in the meeting minutes. Again, that's not the purpose of the meeting minutes, and no one has the right to force anyone to put that kind of information in the meeting minutes. They're supposed to be very streamlined about what actions and decisions were made, who voted on what, and so on. Very simple.
Yep. And we also do have a really good blog post specifically about how to write your minutes on FAN. So it's meeting minutes, guidelines for HOAs and condos. So that's great. And that is on our blog. And I know we've referred to it many times. You can actually access our blog at getfan.org or readfan.org. I know we've mentioned that. But Florida Association News is comprised of our monthly newsletter, our blog, and our fan search tool. And it's really just a great resource where we've compiled tons of information and everything you need to know. And you will be subscribed automatically based on your participation in today's webinar. So we hope you enjoy it. And then one other thing that I am going to be sending to you today, along with the presentation, is our board member primer. And it's really meant to introduce new board members to their roles and responsibilities, but it also provides information and helps current board members to just continually educate yourself as new laws come out and things change as they relate to community association matters in Florida. So I will be sending that out, and that's the end, but I will be sending everything out. I'll be sending out the presentation, a link to the video recording, the board member primer, and you all will be subscribed to FAN. Right now, I am going to launch that last poll just to get your feedback on how we did today. So if you can please take that for us, because we greatly appreciate your time and we hope you found it of value. And I'll turn it over to Dan if you have any last parting words for us today.
I just want to thank everybody for investing your time today. I know you've got a lot going on and we appreciate your time. You guys are volunteers and you're the heroes for your community, and hopefully people will begin to recognize that and treat you that way. I do see there's some questions on here that some people had that I will I'll see if I can address a few of them. Let's see. Getting beyond the comments that we asked for. I'll work from the bottom up. So, there's some questions about how do you resurrect something that was not handled in the past that you want to add to the board agenda again? How can you resurrect a defeated issue? That's pretty straightforward. As I would say that you just get a majority of the board that wants to discuss it, and then they can make a motion to add it to the next meeting. That's a really straightforward way to do it. And if it's something that owners are concerned about, but maybe the board's not, like I mentioned earlier, you can get a 20% petition of 20% of the owners to get something added back to the agenda. Okay, someone said at a point, a board member makes a motion and the board members vote unless as a board you want to change something in your docs, then the vote has to go to the owners. No, that never happens. The votes never go to the owners except on very specific issues related to things like material changes and a few other things changing the docs. But at the same time, any board can absolutely take owner input. And it's highly suggested that you do that on certain topics. Like I'll tell you, a great thing to get an owner poll on is a material change. If you're wanting to change the paint color of your building, that's something that you can send out a survey and ask people, what do you think? Our building's always been this light blue. We're thinking of changing it to a light gray and white. And here's what it would look like. How many of you think this would be a good idea? And here's the reason why we think it is a good idea. That's something you do want to do a poll on, or asking people about cable versus cable and internet. If you want to find out how many people, or is there an interest potentially in getting rid of cable and only having bulk internet, and getting people's vote on that, for example. So you can get whatever votes you want, but you don't need to necessarily follow them. You can use them as input. All right. Well, great. Well, I think we're about at the end of the time here. Again, thank you all for coming. And like Ashley said, we'll send the presentation as well as a link to the recording and all the other information we mentioned in a follow-up email in the next day or so. And we appreciate your time, and make sure to come to other classes we have in the future. We're doing 2 or 3 a month, and hopefully you'll learn some things about it. So have a great day.